What's going on, everybody? My name is Kuya Estilo.
And I'm Trish.
And this is the Sweet Spaghetti Podcast. I'm just looking everywhere. Where, we keep the conversations, we keep them a little sweet,
A little saucy.
little saucy, a little bit of everything. And today I am very excited because we got a dope guest, a very unexpected guest. We got none other than Justin Jones, who is an incredible activist, politician, who is part of the House, the 52nd District in Tennessee. And we're excited to have you in here today, man. Thanks for coming through.
Grateful to be here, brother.
And 5, 6, 7, 8, sweet.
Spaghetti. Why is that spaghetti so sweet?
Funky sweet spaghetti. Yeah, so first off, like you said, you're here for like an award ceremony or something like that, right?
Yeah, I'm here for the Hollywood Impact Awards tonight, and so honoring the connection between culture, activism, politics, and just lifting up voices who've been dreamers, disruptors in their fields. And so really excited about being here, and reached out to my brother here, and we did a photo shoot this morning with the Lolas and the grandmas.
Oh, it looks so good.
And it's been an amazing day, just grounding in creativity. I think it's really needed, and especially with everything going on in our country right now, to be able to have creativity, have joy. That's also a form of resistance. So,
Of course. Yeah. And now you're originally, we talked about this, but you're originally from Oakland, which I didn't know that honestly until I got your contact information.
Oh, yeah.
And then it made tons of sense because it has such a deep history of organizing there. Where like in your upbringing did community building become something that you knew maybe would become a lifelong passion of yours?
Yeah, so like most Filipinos, my mom is a nurse, my grandma's a nurse, my aunt's a nurse, and so
Okay.
I grew up
I feel you.
seeing nurses. My mom, when I was little, would take me to the nurses' strikes when the union was on strike, and so I saw the power of people power. My grandma. Really, I tell people, I went to all these different schools, but like my first teachers about justice and about love and about community were my grandmas. My grandma Tessie, who's Filipino, and my grandma Harriet, whose family left the South during Jim Crow, and who's African American. And so they taught me what it means to think about someone, not just this moment, but the generations that are yet to come. And so that's what taught me. And growing up in Oakland, I was there during the Occupy movement. I was there when Trayvon Martin was killed. That's when I first started organizing around, racial justice and gun violence. And I remember when I first went to Tennessee, my aunt was dropping me off to the airport. She was like, "Justin, this is not Cali, so you gotta kind of just move a little slower. Don't be too."
When you moved to Tennessee.
When I moved to Tennessee,
Yeah.
because in Oakland I was like organizing protests. I boycotted graduation. I was just getting in all this good trouble. And Tennessee's a little different. And I listened to them like my first few months, and I was like, we gotta continue to fight for what we believe in, and continue the movement.
What did your family think of that when you were doing that? Were they scared for you? Were they?
Yeah.
What was that like?
I mean, I think they're still worried, and I think they were then. But I went to college. I went to I went to an HBCU in Nashville called Fisk University, and I got the John Lewis Scholarship for Social Activism. So they knew, what they're going to get with me as a student. But I just, I tell people that the South is just a different starting point for a lot of these conversations about, looking at, diversity, equity, inclusion. Those topics are now banned in my state. They're banning books about Black history, banning books about, diverse stories, immigrant stories, banning things like drag shows in Tennessee. And you really see this regression coming. But I think, for me, even being here right now and being with you all, it reminds me that this is what makes this nation the nation that we, want for our future generations, where we can talk about our culture. We can talk about not just being in fight or flight mode, but being able to just be our whole authentic selves and to embrace who we are. And so, I'm Black, I'm Filipino, I'm also indigenous, and my family is Native American as well. And so like bringing that whole embodiment with me everywhere I go, and just really being able to, recently embrace like my Filipino culture, because for so long that was a topic that I've had to navigate and learn more about, just because of something that I was sharing, growing up with some of the things we learned in Filipino culture.
Yeah.
That, me being darker skin is something that's not always accepted, but we know that magandang moreno, that, brown is
Yes.
beautiful. And when I went to the Philippines, I remember being with my Lola, and they thought I was the the katulong. They thought I was the helper, you know, because I was lighter skinned. And so I remember having to navigate that trauma, navigate that pain, but also recognizing that when we went up and I met, you know, the people who are Ibanag, when I met the Ivatan people in Batanes, the native indigenous people, they look like me. They, you know, that's who they look like.
Yeah.
We, you know, when I met the Aita people, they look like me.
Yeah.
And that's who we are as a people. And I think there's something powerful that we have to lean into that history and embrace that. And it's been a healing journey.
Did you grow up around a lot of Filipinos? You grew up in Sacramento and you grew up in Oakland.
You know, yeah, so
I'm not too familiar with. I know there's a lot of Bay Area pride.
yeah.
And I don't know if it's like taboo to mix them up, but
Oh, no.
I'm like,
Well,
is there
Sac's
beef?
not the Bay.
Is Sac
so
the
don't,
Bay? No, I'm just
don't
kidding.
get me in trouble there. I didn't say Sac was the Bay. I didn't say it.
Yeah.
Oh, whoops.
Sweetie says it's the Bay though. So
So who's the real authority?
yeah. No. But I mean, my high school was majority Black and Filipino, and
Okay.
so like I grew up, you know, around that diversity of culture. But you know, it wasn't until I left that I was able to really appreciate. Like I call my Lola sometimes and just want her to talk to me in Tagalog because I miss hearing that living in Tennessee. I have to drive an hour to go get Filipino food, to get sinigang and you know lumpia Shanghai and you know, all the foods that I like that I miss back home.
hour.
Adobo, an hour to the military base because in Tennessee we don't have a large Filipino community like I was blessed with growing up, and so it's been beautiful to be back here, even doing this shoot today, to have some of the biko and some of the coconut, you know, desserts and pandesal, and I was hoping to make it to go get me some Filipino food from Filipino Town. I'm gonna have to do that next trip, but it's so good to be around our people, our kapwa, and just remember our connection to each other.
Yeah, we gotta make sure you're.
Hey, well, we might
packing
have
some
time to
Filipino
grab. We
food.
might have time if you roll with me. We might have time to slide through Hi-Fi and
Yeah,
get some at Hi-Fi
for real.
Kitchen. Maybe we could do it quick.
Yeah.
Man, you talked about so much there that I want to dive into. But one thing that you just said that I wondered about was you're talking about just having moments to be authentic and be yourselves. I see how much energy you put into your politics and advocating for people. How do you take care of yourself though? Like, are you ever able to shut that part of your brain off and just be, or is it something that's always kind of turned on in your mind? How do you, that's a lot to have on your shoulders all the time.
Yeah. You know, I've been having to learn more about that because, you know, in this work, it's been a journey for me. So before I was even elected, I was a community organizer, and so I was arrested 18 times. I was banned from the Capitol, faced, you know, militarized police, brutalized that brutality, and had to learn how do we process this. And there's, you know, it's talking to my elders to remember practices that will sustain us because we don't want to burn out. And so, I mean, one thing I did recently, I was just in the rodeo. I have a horse.
I saw
You
that.
have a horse?
I have a horse, and so I ride horses. I am able to be with so many musicians in Nashville. So I'm always at concerts. I was just, you know, actually, I went to 2 of her concerts, but my friend Haley Williams from Paramore was able to go to her concert. And
Hold on,
I've heard of
pause,
her.
hold up, bro. You did not just casually drop that on us.
Like, wait,
This is my friend.
I've been on a Haley binge the last couple weeks too.
Oh my
She
goodness.
is she on tour?
she is, yeah.
Yeah, her fits in her recent tour. But I love how you said it.
Yeah, my friend Haley Williams
Yeah,
from
I'm, like,
Paramore.
freaking
I don't
out.
know if you're familiar from
I've
Paramore.
heard of her. She
You-
sounds familiar. Yeah.
I mean, but she's really showed up for the movement. Like, you know, she did a whole song about kind of calling out the racist country music artists in Nashville, and
Yes.
and was able to, you know, be in that music video and lift up, you know, our vision, which is a vision of a new South. Because I always tell people, if you change the South, states like Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, you can change the nation. Because this is really the front line. But like going to concerts, you know, just being around community and just really remembering that. You know, we don't have to have that mentality that we're coming in as messiahs. Like we're part of a movement, and that we have to remember that it's not just on one person alone, and that we don't want to be the one person, because that's,
Yeah.
you know, number one, that'll put a target on you. Number two, it's just not sustainable. But like to connect ourselves to something bigger. And so, you know, even today I was kind of getting emotional with the shoot that we did with the Lolas here, because I remember when I went to court, I had to go to court each time. They charged me with crazy things like inciting a riot to assaulting the police, all these false charges. I had to go to court for each of these charges. They even put a warrant for my arrest about aggravated littering, and they came to my house to come to arrest me for something.
What does aggravated littering mean?
So to them, so we spent 62 days sleeping outside the Capitol, and so I slept outside there 24/7, and we put like
Oh.
sleeping bags and stuff. They said that was littering, and so they filed a warrant and they arrested us. But I went to court, and each time I went to court, because they were trying to portray me as this violent extremist, I went with all these grandmas in white, and they all wore white, and we call them the circle elders. And so every time I went to court, I was like surrounded by grandmas, and it just, to me, that like showed the power of a multi-generational movement right now, and it just really was grounding to see. There's a saying by Maya Angelou. She says that I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. That we come with our ancestors, we come with all of these people. You know, in Tagalog, with the word kapwa, all of our community with us, and that's something I think that has really been a practice of care and remembering bayanihan. You know, that all these things that my Lola would teach me. You know, I just remember the things my Lola would teach me growing up. She said, "Kapag binato ng bato, batuhin mo ng tinapay." When somebody throws a rock at you, you give to them bread. And like, so even, you know, when I was kicked out, I'm going to all the things, but I'm sure, you know, hopefully we can edit this. But when I was kicked out the legislature, I got kicked out the legislature 3 months after getting elected. I was expelled because there was a school shooting, and it killed 3 9-year-olds and 3 adults, and they wouldn't even talk about gun violence. And so I protested. The short version, I protested, brought a megaphone out. They shut off my microphone, so I pulled a megaphone out of my pocket, got expelled. But I told my colleagues there, I said, even the ones who are threatening me, who kicked me out, who have been so racist to me, I want them to know that I'm fighting for their children and grandchildren too. And I think that's something that my grandma taught me, is like, you know, we don't have to become like them.
Right.
And we can represent something different. My Lola she's the one who told me that there's a connection between faith and justice, because she was in the Philippines when Marcos was there. And she said she always told me these stories, I remembered in my head, of the nuns doing the rosary in front of tanks when they're trying to run people over.
They put flowers on.
And
tanks
that is
rosaries.
faith in action. That's the faith that I believe in. Not a faith that just says, oh, we're going to just pray and do nothing, but faith that says we're going to pray with our hands and feet and take action and remember that we are accountable to something higher than these authorities of president or military or whatever. Like, we're connected to something more powerful, our ancestors, to the divine. There's something more powerful rooting us, and that's, I think, something that also sustains me. Are these lessons from my Lola and from my grandma.
Wow.
I feel like you touched on something there that stood out to me. I feel like because your background is in activism and community organizing, and now you're a state rep, and I feel like there's the notion there that, you know, once you're in session and you're amongst other politicians, the expectation is you're gonna button up, you're going to be, you know, to assimilate, I guess, but that's not what you did, and that's kind of what got you in trouble, quote unquote, and that's how all that happened. And thanks for summarizing this for some people who might not be familiar. But I guess, first of all, is that the typical route for being a state rep? Is that background? And also, how do you balance that, and how do you reconcile, I guess, having an activist background and now being inside the institution, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a point of friction. You know, when I first got elected, I remember even my first week there, because I came in as somebody who had even been arrested prior to being, you know, in that office, not just in 2020, but we used to have a KKK statue in our Capitol, and I led the campaign to remove it. A statue of the KKK, not the KKK from the Philippines about liberation,
very
but the
very
KKK
different.
that wears white sheets and burns crosses on people's yard. And they honored this in the Capitol. So I remember climbing that statue. I covered it. We fought to remove it. We got rid of it, because, you know, the thing I would say is that if we can't remove such an overt symbol of white supremacist here, then how will we remove the more sophisticated and subtle policies that this statue represents? And so, you know, when I got elected, I remember my first week. There's a man. His name is Jack Johnson. He's the Republican leader in the Senate. And he's like, Jones, I want you to know that you're worthless, and you're not even supposed to be here. I was on the elevator going to committee in my suit, and this was my welcome to the legislature. And
Very warm.
Very warm, yeah, but this is how all these old racist white men act. But at that moment, I didn't even know how to respond.
These are your colleagues.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Air quotes.
Yeah.
Loosely.
A bit of a toxic work environment. Is there HR?
Well, but the thing that it taught me, though, is it actually taught me one of my most important lessons, being, you know, what I would call a movement legislator, is that I'm not here to make friends with these people. I'm not here to go hunting with the governor, get invited to his Christmas party, but I'm here to make change for my district. And so, even, you know, I think I'm the only Filipino person elected in our whole state, and one of the few Asians. I think the only Asian who's not in the Republican Party, and who got elected. And so I even remember coming in, and one thing they're like, you know, your hair's not really in the quorum. These earrings are not really in the quorum.
Well, you've been told that?
Oh, this is my first one. They're going in orientation, telling you, you know, you're supposed to wear because in order to speak on the House floor, you have to have a jacket and a tie, and you have to. There's all these decorum rules to even be recognized on the House floor to be allowed to speak on the House floor. But it's all rooted in white supremacy and colonial notions of what is respectable and what is acceptable. And so that's when I started growing my hair out even longer. I was like, I'm gonna make sure. And I used to have just like the small ones. I got a little bigger earring because I wanted them to
You're
know.
like, in that case,
I want,
I'm
I'm
gonna
like,
be
I want to show them, and like even like I try and just do everything to subvert their rules. Like I don't wear traditional ties. I use bolo ties. I just do whatever I can to show that we're not going to be assimilated into the system that was never meant for us, and that even our presence in itself is disruptive and a form of resistance. When I go to committee, I'm often the only person of color on my committees. Like on agriculture committee, I serve on agriculture committee. It's all old white men who don't even think like someone like me should be sitting next to them.
Yeah.
And just a couple weeks ago, it was in the news. There was a whole special session to dismantle the last majority Black and brown district in our state, so then all our congressional districts would be white led. And it was a whole scam. It was all rooted in Jim Crow and all this racism. And when I walked off the House floor, I burned a Confederate flag. I walked out and burned a Confederate flag because that's what they're trying to bring us back to. This time where people like us are not even treated as equal citizens in our democracy. And what I tell people too is that, this is not just about, because so many people get into this like partisan tit for tat, but really to me, being in office is a form of organizing, because you're able, like, whereas 2020, I was sleeping outside the Capitol, knocking on the door, begging them, please see us, please see our humanity. Now I can sit on the dais with them, and I can drag them, I can call them out, I can force them to have a conversation by filing legislation. It's a form of organizing, and it's a way. And we see this in the Philippines. The Philippines has had people who were opposition leaders.
Yeah.
Ninoy Aquino, and some who was assassinated, challenging abuses of power. And I always remember his wife's quote. She said, "I would rather die a meaningful death than live a meaningless life."
Yeah.
And I think that's what should guide us in our service. That so many people, they get into political office, or they get into a business, or they get into a corporation, or whatever, and they start just becoming so obsessed and attached to a title that they forget their purpose. And titles are nice, but your purpose is better. So even when they expelled me, when they kicked me off my committee, kicked me out the government, they could not take away my purpose. And that's what drove them crazy, is that they want to break you, but they don't know where I come from. I come from grandmothers who've been through colonialism, through Jim Crow, just who are rooted me and grounded me in my people, that these white men in Tennessee don't understand, that they just see me in the room. They don't understand that it was Tessie and Harriet and all these matriarchs in my family who gave me strength to fight them and to never break. And so I think that's what makes them so angry, is that they're so used to us being afraid. But also I grew up in the Bay, and so that's also brings a whole another level of knowing how to fight back. Having family who's in the Black Panther Party, so there's all these connections. But I think it's so powerful to be seeing these conversations transcend just a specific region, and seeing that what happens in the South is connected to what happens in Southern California. We are connected in our fights here, and the same ICE agents who are terrorizing LA are terrorizing my people in Tennessee right now. And so, how do we start building these transcendent movements that transcend just like a little pocket, that transcend, just being isolated and siloed, but saying that if they come for one of us, they're coming for all of us. I think that's what we have to continue to organize around, that idea of intersectionality and deep solidarity.
How do you balance that though? Being able to work with your colleagues, like other representatives, but also being true to yourself and true to representing your people. I feel like we've seen this in I don't know, was it what's that Star Wars series recently?
The Mandalorian?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I don't know if it was Andor, but that you'll see in
You got
in
Filipino there, but you
movements.
said Star Wars.
Star Wars.
You got it came out.
Star Wars. Star Wars. I don't know if it was there, but you'll see in these different movements, right? In real life and in TV, there's different types of people play different roles in activism and movements. Some are more like assimilators, where they want to be able to cooperate with the status quo, and others are disruptors, where you have to be more progressive to really make change. Can that exist in one person? Do you stay true to yourself? Do you play the game? How do you do that?
Yeah, I think in this moment we have to match energy.
Yeah.
And so we're facing people who have no norms, who could care less about us. There's no type of assimilation or negotiation that will work. We're dealing with people who think that they have a mandate from God or whatever to subjugate us. We are facing people whose idea that America's becoming more black and brown is a danger to their power, so they're trying to destroy us. And so there's not really, an opportunity to try and play traditional politics with them. We have to do something that brings moral clarity and urgency, because in this moment that we're in, there is such a thing as being too late. We have to recognize that there's this urgency in this moment, that we may lose not only our rights, but we may lose the ability to bequeath a future to those next generations, because we have people who are destroying our environment, who are letting white supremacists, giving reparations to white nationalists who attacked the Capitol. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. These are people who want to instigate white supremacist terror and vigilantism against people who look like us.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to match energy. We have to bring, because it's interesting, they'll call someone like me radical or progressive, but really, if you talk to most people in our community, we are aligned.
God forbid a girl want basic rights.
I mean, just
like
the people who are extreme are the people who are trying to dismantle all this. So they're the ones who are extreme. What we're asking for is not, we want people to have health care, to be able to provide for their families, to be able to not have to decide, am I going to get prescriptions or am I going to get my groceries? The things like basic things. And I think, we want to be able to be free from masked men kidnapping people in the street called ICE and not knowing just because of how you look. And I think these are not radical things, these are common sense things. And so I think, what we're facing is a moment in which we have to do things out of the ordinary. Because if we don't, I mean, there's people who say they want to take this nation back, they're going to take us back to a time we don't want to go to.
Do you ever have fear? I'd imagine, first off, your acts of activism politically, burning the, photo of the Confederate flag, all these are things that, from someone like me, for example, be like, yo, Willie, go set something on fire in a building. I'd be like, bro, are you tripping? Like, I'm gonna, So do you still feel fear, nervousness when you do these things? Is there a place that your courage comes from? Is it where you've been doing it for so many years now, arrested 18 times, like you said, and that's all before you even elected to office in 2023, right? Do you still feel nervousness? Do you still feel fear? Do you fear like the repercussions from, because people are crazy out there, like threatening you? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing is this. I'm aware that we have people here who, we saw it on January 6th. We see it in Tennessee a lot. I remember walking out the Capitol one day, and there's all these men dressed in black face coverings with red shirts with swastikas chanting, "Save the white man to deport every Mexican," and there was like all gathered outside the Capitol. And I saw that, but what I recognize is that these people are actually very weak and they're very fragile. Like, these are the ones who are afraid. And we're dealing with cowards. To me, if you are somebody who's confident in your power, or somebody who is not weak, you don't have to like suppress dissent. You don't have to do these things. You don't have to be afraid of your immigrant neighbor. Like, so to me, they're the ones who are more fearful. But I'm not naive. I know that there is, even when I burned that flag, I knew there was going to be consequences. But I was prepared to accept whatever consequence the Speaker of the House did, because what we're facing needed to be dramatized for the nation. Like, this is the threat, and it's something that we have to do to draw attention to this moment, that there's an emergency happening. And so, but one of my most important lessons in organizing, and I taught a course, I was teaching at a university till recently, and I taught a course on social activism, social movements. I always tell my students that, two things. One, you can judge the effectiveness of your movement or the action you're taking by the response of your opponents. And so if they ignore you, then it's not effective. If they're like, give them a permit, just let them do that, then it's not an effective movement. But if they feel threatened and they start trying to target you, attack you, then you know that what's happening is effective. And then number two, power only shows itself when it's threatened. And so like in 2020, we saw militarized police forces on the streets of America. We saw people coming out in riot gear because they felt threatened. Their power was actually threatened. And so we're seeing the same thing right now in Washington with National Guard. And in Tennessee, we have the National Guard. I think they were here in Los Angeles. And so, this system, it feels threatened. And so that means that what we're doing this moment has the power to transform and push this nation forward if we continue and recognize that that we have to connect ourselves to a movement that is just bigger than one person or one organization, but we really have to build these networks of solidarity and coalitions.
I feel like with everything going on right now, because what you're saying is if we don't have power, then then your opponents or people who are trying to oppress people wouldn't care.
Yeah.
So with everything going on right now, would you say, as hopeless as I think the average person feels, is that actually a good sign?
Yeah, I mean, in Tennessee we have a saying that a dying mule kicks the hardest, and so that's why they're kicking so hard, because this mule of white supremacy, of xenophobia, Islamophobia, homophobia, transphobia, it feels threatened. It's dying. They're losing control of power. I mean, look at the South. They may lose Texas this election because of the diversifying that by in the 2030s we will become a majority black and brown country. They're so afraid of that because they think we're going to do to them what they've done to us. They think that we're going to subjugate them because that's what they've done when we were the minority. But that's not who we are.
No.
Whether Filipino, black, like we've always been people who have taken our pain and been creative. From the trauma they've given us, we blessed this world with art and music and poetry and literature. Like that's what we've done with our pain. What have they done with their pain? They've tried to re-traumatize other people instead of dealing with it. Like Trump is somebody who's very traumatized. You look at him, he can't even sleep. He's up at 3 a.m. on the toilet tweeting crazy stuff because he can't sleep. He looks sick. If you look at him, it's because he hasn't dealt with it. So he's trying to traumatize all of us. But it's bigger than even him, though. It's like there's so many other mini Trumps all across this country. I think there's a man here running for mayor in Los Angeles now, Spencer, whatever his name is, but he has the same mentality. And so, I just, what gives me hope though is that we've survived and people are still not. You have farmers in the Philippines right now who are fighting, fighting back, and I think that's the strength of our people, And so I think that's what we have to be grounded in. There's two things. One, we remember the strength of our ancestors, but number two, everything we're doing in this moment, we're accountable to our children.
Yeah.
And I remember one thing I started doing when I did have some doubts and I was questioning, like 2020 was a crazy time even when I got elected, but I would remember writing letters to my children like, this is why I'm doing this. I want them to know that even though I have not even met them yet, I want them to know that everything I'm doing is for them to not have to be living in this insanity right now. And I think that's what my Lola taught me, and I think that's what we have to just remember is that people are counting on what we do in this moment, and I would err on the side of taking action because you'll be judged not by what you do, but by what you don't do. And so err on the side of doing something to challenge this regression and extremism that we're facing right now.
I feel like
I can't remember that, man. This is totally random. There's a song. I wish I knew where the speech was from, but it's something that's like, what do you fear? And he's like, I fear that one day my son will look at me and say, what did you do, Daddy, when you looked around and you saw shit was burning down or something like that? And it's like, did you do something about it?
Exactly. And also, again, I go back to Andor. But
did you just watch this
it?
one?
No, I know.
You're like,
I
really?
watched it last year. Have you seen it?
I've seen it, and that was like the first Star Wars thing I watched. Because everyone was saying when she gave that final speech.
You never saw any Star Wars before?
I didn't really grow. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So, then after I watched that, I started watching this.
Yes.
But like that scene where she had reached the pinnacle, been in that Senate for a long time, but she finally was willing to sacrifice to call out the abuse.
Yes.
Of
that frame.
Yeah.
I haven't watched Andor yet. I guess I gotta get on
so
it.
good.
It builds up.
And the
manifesto.
The manifesto is so good. I want that tattooed on my face.
Okay.
I don't even have tattoos. That'll be my first one.
But what that show shows is like resistance is not going to be this one huge event, but it's going to be the everyday actions of ordinary people resisting. What was it? The empire resisting. This system. It's not going to be just one. Because in our head we romanticize revolution as like this one big moment where we're all like
overnight,
and we're like all up here. But it's like no. In Andor we see those everyday moments of people not cooperating, of people refusing to inform on their neighbors, of people using their position. I mean, even the people when she was giving her speech who refused to turn off the power, even though they were ordered to. That was the revolution happening. And so like, there's so many roles for people. And so I want people to see like activism can look so many different ways.
Can I follow up on that? So I think a lot of folks I think can relate to that idea that when maybe you see what you're up against, right? You're up against this giant wave, right? This mountain, and sometimes it feels disheartening. Why should I even take one step? What is one step to climb this mountain? What do you think is that small step somebody that wants to engage with, but doesn't really know how to take the big chunk, right? Maybe they're not ready to burn pictures in the Capitol building. What's the small step do you think that someone takes first if they want to be a part of that momentum.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is like looking at ways to like organize in your community, whether that's mutual aid, whether that's like finding ways like you organizing is somehow it's become distorted so that it's all online. It has to be all public and visible and has to have engagement. Like real organizing is in person. And I think, going through your neighborhood and coming up with a list of people saying, okay, these are seniors in our neighborhood. If there's ever a situation we can, we want them to know that we are here to help them. These are the immigrants in our neighborhood who might, if you're afraid to go pick up your kid because there's a lot of ICE activity, we'll come and help, get your groceries and help pick up your kids from school. Like finding ways to just show up for each other. I think that is what rebellion looks like, is like finding ways to organize in person, build these networks of solidarity and mutual aid and community. I think like looking at things like that, even in this moment of revisionism and erasure, like talking to your elders and writing their stories down, like archiving that, like using photography and storytelling to like bear witness to this moment. I'm really big on archiving and talking to elders and really preserving that history, because you have a system in our government right now where they're erasing in my state we've banned over 1,000 books about our stories. And so like how do we tell our own
Tennessee?
In Tennessee, yeah. I mean, they passed a bill about banning divisive concepts. And so any concept
Why would you ban any book?
that part, but it's because they're threatened by it, and also they can't read. And so those are the two things.
How do you even know which one to ban?
They're like, there's a black person on the cover, ban it.
Yeah.
There's an immigrant, there's a woman, oh, there's a pride flag, ban it. That's what they do.
In some cases it was like Control F for even like government websites.
Yeah.
It's like, let's look, woman, gay.
I used to work in. We talked a little bit about this restorative justice theater. So I actually worked with the military, and we would do sexual assault prevention training. That's what we did. And when Trump was elected, they had in the domestic abuse or the intimate partner violence brochures they had for the Marine Corps, there was a same-sex couple, a picture of a same-sex couple in the intimate partner violence brochures. They had them dump them and reprint all of them.
Wow.
Because
of that.
the censorship was crazy. Not to mention just like at a baseline, you're like, you really like just burn through tax dollars for this like censorship, which is wild to me.
It's like costing more.
Yeah.
There's no level where it's like okay to do.
I even heard there was this one, I forget the exact story, but there was this one man who was that veterans were honoring, and his last name was Gay, and then they like removed him from the website accidentally.
Just because they
probably just Control F, like literally.
Anything gay, yeah.
Like that's
even though half of them are closeted, and so like because that's why they're so obsessed with erasing people. It always comes out in my state too. I mean, it came out in Tennessee. Tennessee was the first state to ban drag shows. They tried to ban pride flags from our classrooms. The first state to ban or to take it to Supreme Court transgender youth affirming care. All these things just targeting, just so obsessed with attacking the LGBTQ community, and it's because a lot of them are not comfortable with who they are, or they have to beat up on someone to feel powerful, because they have to find somebody to make themselves feel accepted, and that's it's shameful. So I remember when they banned drag shows, I brought drag queens to the House floor from RuPaul's Drag Race. So Jada Essence Hall, Sasha Velour, I brought them to the House floor. The week later, they changed the rules that we can't bring anybody to the House floor without permission. But it's like finding ways to resist in that moment. As they're attacking immigrants, every lawmaker gets to bring someone to do a prayer. And they always bring all these white Christian pastors. I was the first lawmaker to bring Native people to open our session, and because we're on their land. You want to talk about who's an immigrant? It's these folks who came from Europe. Right. You too are immigrants. Because your last names don't sound like a Choctaw, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Lumbee name. It's because you came from somewhere. But they want to create this mythology that they are. This is their land. When it was our ancestors who built this and who worked in agriculture on both sides of my family. My family who was brought here enslaved, but even my great grandpa who came as one of the Manongs in Delano during World War II and was working, picking grapes and then sending back home to my money to the Philippines. He would roll up the dollars and put it in toothpaste things and then mail it back home to the Philippines. And that's what my Lola said they would get the money back. because they didn't have, so then they wouldn't tax it, whatever they had to do. But
Oh, wow.
this was the ingenuity
Whoa,
of
I've
our
never heard
Me
elders.
too, I
those
was like,
stories
wait, what?
before.
Yeah.
I didn't know that the Manongs were having to kind of smuggle
Wow,
money
yeah.
back.
Me neither.
At least I know that's what my grandma told me her dad would do.
I mean, I
Yeah.
believe.
I've
Yeah.
like hung
I
up on the
believe.
logistics of that. I was like, how do you even get all the toothpaste out of the toothpaste?
It's true.
That I was like, wait.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
wild. So he was. So your great grandpa was one of the Manongs.
Yeah, so he came here
Came
during
here.
World War II, and so
You have deep roots. In
yeah, they
labor
came
movement.
and we know it's Filipino people who really started the labor movement. Before Cesar Chavez, who now is where we don't that whole situation.
Yeah.
But it was Filipino people. Like we've been, and even if you study Filipinos coming here, like Morro Bay, Filipino people have been here before this was even a country.
Yeah.
And so when they talk about belonging and a sense of who is connected here, we know it's not the people who came from Europe and who stole land and forced people to work it for them. And so I think that's something we have to shift, because even with our own culture, I think that's something that we have to reckon with is colorism, is this inherent systems of white supremacy. Like I told you, going to the Philippines, and I remember my Lola almost cussed this lady out because she was talking about how her daughter was so much more beautiful because she's half white, and talking
Yep.
about me looking ugly. Not knowing I could understand, but I didn't say anything. I was used to it. But my Lola was like, she was so angry, and there's been times where I've seen my Lola have to like cuss out someone in Tagalog for what they're saying, because she's like, you're not gonna say that in front of my grandson.
Yeah.
And
Wait, where were they saying this?
when we were in the airport in the Philippines.
Oh, in the yeah,
And
yeah.
so, but even, I mean, in here, like, I have relatives who would say, don't go into the sun, or bring me some skin whitening soap. Like, that's going to help. Like, what am I going to do with
100%.
this?
I've used like papaya soap growing up. I grew up in the Philippines. So, I mean, definitely, it's like, and then we were talking about this last time, and it's, when you're told that you look like my halo or my lahe, like you're mixed, meaning like mixed with white, then it's like a good thing. It's a compliment.
Yeah.
And you're like trained to take that as a compliment. So.
Yeah. But it's because of colonization and because of Spanish beauty standards. But I think we're seeing a shift from that. You're having artists who are calling it out, like Ruby Ibarra. You're having all these artists who are embracing the strength of who we are in our indigeneity. The Center for Babaylan Studies, Tita Lenny, who I was able to connect with back in the Bay. Like, you're seeing people really embrace our indigeneity and embrace what it means to remember that we existed before colonization, that there's something more powerful that they try to take from us. The Babaylans were so threatening that they threw them and fed them to the crocodiles to try to erase them. But it was, these powerful women or trans, non-gender conforming people who are healers, who are spiritual teachers, in our indigenous cultures, like learning that, but also learning that like there are indigenous people in the Philippines who are still leading movements, for agricultural land, for the right to protect their land from these foreign corporations who are mining, exploiting the resources. And again, it was so beautiful. I remember we went to Batanes because we were in Manila. I said, Lola, is there somewhere we can go? I want to connect to our, to the indigenous people here. And she said, we're going to go to Batanes. And there are not a lot of people go to Batanes because it's closer to Taiwan than it is to Manila. We went up there, and there's not a lot of people there, but we met the Ivatan people there, and it was just so powerful. And to see, like I said, they look like me. These are people who are so grounded in their community and in their indigenous culture. It was just really powerful and beautiful to see.
Where's your Lola from?
So my Lola is from Cagayan originally. So my Lola is one of the few Filipino people I know who doesn't have a Spanish last name, and so she still has her indigenous last name, Narag. And so
That's cool.
And so like to be able to like learn that, and she'll still know some Ibanag words like makatao, and Ibanag means come here. And like her dad and them spoke Ibanag, and then she grew up in Buting, and so she speaks Tagalog. And then my grandpa's family is from Pangasinan, from Mangatarem, so we represent. And so we love Tupig, and he goes home every year because it's too cold in the Bay for him. So we still he still goes there every year. And
That's the Filipino dream.
You know who else was
that's
from Pangasinan? Itliong.
Really? I
He's
didn't know that.
Pangasinense.
Oh,
too.
wow.
Yeah. Larry Itliong.
See?
Oh,
It must
yeah.
activism must run in the
That's it.
Pangasinense
It's
blood.
like, because I think it's because of farming and a fishing industry, maybe, and then that was exported here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just made that up.
That's possible. Yeah, maybe for the agricultural labor. Yeah.
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 I grew up around like the Manong area because my family's from Stockton.
Oh yeah.
So there was a place there called the Dagohoy, where all the Filipinos would gather, and that was like the social center. But my Lola was military, but they just lived in Central California, so a lot of the the Manong. And my dad actually has a short documentary he shot in the 70s
Oh, wow.
where he
Oh,
interviewed
what?
all the Manongs.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get it and send it
Yeah,
to you. It's
please
pretty.
send.
It's like 10 minutes long, but yeah.
Out here, interview them out.
Yeah, in Stockton. He's like
Yeah.
at the Dagohoy. He's like, my dad's
Ooh.
younger than me in the now
my
in the
gosh.
video.
Yeah.
It's wild. But yeah,
Such a
That's
legacy.
wild.
And even back then, like these white men were so threatened by them that they would have signs like "No Filipinos." They would try and ban them because they were stealing.
Oh, yeah,
they
no
had the
women.
swag and they
Right,
could
like
have the dance moves, and they felt threatened by that. And so what did they do? There were signs that was like "No this, no this, no Filipinos."
Well,
like,
Sorry, you have no sauce.
and
Yeah.
for you,
shit.
like with your mix, is like you have like the through line for it because you have the zoot suits that started in New York with black culture. And then made its way out west for Chicano and Filipino culture out here. So you're like representing both sides of
Bringing it-
that
the
swag
fusion.
right
Yeah.
there, in there.
But real quick because we were talking about, I guess, through lines and parallels between like Philippine politics, Filipino culture, and the U.S. And you were talking about people power earlier. And I feel like for me, I also kind of, I looked to people power, and I grew up. I was in the Philippines till I was 18, so I lived through like the second EDSA revolution when Joseph Estrada was ousted for corruption. And so I saw all that, and I also saw the history of people power, like you were saying. Your Lola was there too. My mom was like working age, so they would like go over there. So I like almost romanticize it, and then I also wonder like, oh, why does that not happen here in the U.S.? Although obviously the U.S. has had very strong movements, just probably through the U.S. really goes through like legislation versus like in the Philippines maybe democracy is younger there, and so there's more like mass movements is what I imagine. But I guess I do romanticize like people power, but even looking at the Philippines today, we did oust a dictator, but corruption still runs deep. We're electing the same people, the same families are in power. So I guess there's like such a focus in both sides of like who's in power, how do we topple that person, not realizing and forgetting that there's a reason why these people were elected, and it's a deeper system. How do you know when that there is change going on? Or are we just distracted by the current administration, this politician, that politician, when we should be looking at movements? Like, how do you know when there's actual change?
Yeah. I mean, what we see, and this year actually, what is it? July 4th marks the 80th anniversary of Philippine independence from the United States. So it's 80th anniversary of diplomatic relations with the United States. I was just at the embassy in Washington, D.C., the Philippine embassy, meeting with the folks there about it. But, I think what is interesting is that like part of revolution, part of movement is also consciousness raising and making people understand that there has to be structural changes to prevent this from happening again. And so like America's seeing that we're seeing all the gaps in our system that has allowed this man to buy the Supreme Court, take over the Supreme Court, take over the Congress, have no accountability. And I think the Philippines is facing the same thing as a much younger democracy. I think there are foreign countries that have an interest in maintaining corruption so that they can exploit the resources of the Philippines. And I look at who propped up Marcos. It was Reagan, who then gave them cover in Hawaii. Instead of holding them accountable, Reagan was a part of and a complicit accomplice in maintaining that system of brutality and violence and corruption. And so I think what it's going to take people recognizing that we're not going to have saviors. It's not going to be one politician or one political party, but how do we really organize people power? It's not just a slogan, but it's something that shows that we need participatory democracy, that we need participatory budget making, that we need metrics of checks and balances from the public. So things like referendums, which California has but we don't have in Tennessee, is a very powerful tool where the people can directly get enough signatures and you can force something to vote straight to the people. Don't even have to go before all these institutions. I think that's a very powerful thing. Looking at ways to say that, everyone loves national governments, federal government, but like the most important government are your school boards, your local governments, because they're the ones closest to the people. And those are the ones most accountable to the people.
Yeah.
It's like also leaning into more local, regional-based government systems. I think those are the ways that we can look at it. And also, we're going to have to transcend even national boundaries now. Like, the reason I went to the embassy is trying to reach out to some of the Philippine lawmakers who are some of the opposition, more movement-aligned lawmakers from more activist-aligned political parties in the Philippines, because there's a lot more political parties there, and trying to connect with them. Because, things like climate justice, the Philippines has been leading globally on that, where you had the, emissary or the ambassador to the United Nations fasting after Typhoon Haiyan, trying to draw attention to these Western nations that you need to do something, because it's going to be countries like the Philippines who are going to bear the burden of climate change and all these disasters. And so that's something that we're going to have to look at. But there's I think we're going to have a lot more conversations. And one of the people who was one of my heroes in the Philippines, who I was blessed to do an event with, actually here in LA, was it last year? Is Maria Ressa, who has been a voice of democracy and using journalism to hold dictators accountable, being facing charges, just so much resonance. And so like we have to have more conversations, because she even talks about how what they use with social media in the Philippines, they tested it out before they brought it here.
Right.
So all this disinformation,
Bots.
they used it in the Philippines. That's where they tested this out,
Right.
and then they used it in our election in the United States. And so like there's things we can learn from each other, and we have to be able to organize across this ocean, across the Pacific Ocean, with each other too in this moment.
Wow. Well, we got a wrap soon, which I know we're all on tight schedules today. Before that, there's one thing I wanted to give you, and then a last question. There was a director in the Philippines. I might get his name wrong. Lino Baraka. He made these almost. They were like soap opera films, but he very famously was outspoken against the Marcos regime, and he famously wore a barong that said "Justice Across the Front" to the Cannes Film Festival to bring attention to the world about what's going on. So this is a one of one, my friend.
Oh my goodness!
It's for you.
Oh, that's
Justice on the front, para sa cultura
oh
on the
my
back.
goodness, that is fire. That is
and
powerful.
I just want to give this to you
Oh my
because
goodness.
I can think of no one else that would be better to kind
Appreciate you,
of
brother.
carry that legacy, man.
Appreciate you. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Justice. That is powerful. I'm gonna wear this with pride.
I hope
Represent.
you do. Please do. Please
camera
do,
over
my
here.
friend. Yeah. Well, you don't have to. This ain't an ad. We don't need to. But yeah,
is-
I just.
Wow.
I've always been inspired. There's one photo of him at the Cannes Film Festival wearing it, and I always wanted to find a moment to make one and
Oh my goodness.
find someone worthy of it. So I hope
that means a lot, brother.
well for you. Yeah. And then my last question is just, we did a shoot today. Maybe you all have seen it by now, maybe not. With the brand Lola's Prayers, Grandma's Prayers. I know you're a person of spirit. So whether somebody is Christian or believe in some sort of higher purpose, what do you how do you live out every day, and what do you hope to see people live out every day that would be answering the prayers of their ancestors?
Well, first of all, just being here, and the reason why, we got connected because your brand just speaks. If you look at my bio on social media, it says, searching for higher ground, carrying my ancestors' prayers. Like, it's something that has been really instilled with me, and particularly my Lolas, my grandmas who raised me. My mom was a single mom and had me young, and so I was with my Lolas a lot and learning. And I think what it requires in this time to be an answer to someone's prayer is, number one, what our ancestors wanted for us. And I talked to my Lola. The reason why she came here, her family came here, was they wanted us to be able to flourish. To be able to be our whole selves, to not have to be in fight or flight mode all the time. And so number one was living into our whole self and our joy and community being here. I think this was more serious. I remember at the beginning you said we got to keep it sweet, and so
No, dude.
Yeah.
It's everything.
But it's just to be.
This is the sweet part too.
This
You
is-
know what I
yeah.
mean?
But to just be able to connect like this is an answered prayer right now. The fact that we can be here and we can have these conversations and be able to share these stories and to share our connection, not just in this room, but with so many people who are connected virtually with us. I think that is an answered prayer, but also to recognize that everything that has been fought and won, if we don't act, it can be lost. And so when I say pray, we pray I'm someone who believes in prayer, but I also believe that we pray with our hands and feet. And I think that's a big thing. But I think that what I would encourage people to do is to really, and this is part of our culture, like have those multi-generational conversations. Like to be able to talk to Lolas is a blessing. There's nothing. Anytime I can get to the Bay and be with my Lola, I'll never forget. I don't think I ever shared this story with someone. It was when I was out on my charges, and I had all these things I couldn't get arrested, otherwise I'd be brought back to jail. And I was walking my dog and my Lola, and I won't say where it was because I don't know what the statute of limitations is, but we were walking, and then the park police came, and they're like, because they're gonna arrest me because we didn't see the sign that said you're not supposed to walk here, and I had a dog. I said, okay, you go run. They're gonna arrest me because they're like, let them arrest me, not you. And it just makes me emotional thinking about that because like my Lola's willing to put her whole being, her whole body, and she's done that so many times. Like whenever there's been danger, my Lola's like, she's one of the bravest people. We were in Daly City. This man took her purse and her sister, and they chased him and got her purse back.
Okay, Lola.
Like she always says, be matapang, be brave.
Matapang, yeah.
And like and it's like that is the answer to a prayer. And like to me, like everything I am, all of who I exist as, whatever title, whatever I'm getting a wartime, whatever, none of that means anything because all of it is really because of my grandmas and my Lola. And when I walked in here to do this photo shoot today, Kuya here knows I was FaceTime my Lola to show her, to let her see, because she's just somebody who's so special and who has sustained me and who has risked everything. And I think that's what we have to do for generations who are coming, is to willing to have that same, to be matapang, to be willing to sacrifice, to be willing to have that type of love that says that even though we haven't even met you yet, we still love you and we're going to do this for you in this moment. And so may we be good ancestors and elders when we grow up, hopefully we can get old and be able to be out here 93 doing photo shoots too.
That's right.
And so like that's our dream for each other, and hopefully we get to the other side of the revolution, because we don't want to be doing this our whole life. Who wants to be outside, sleeping outside the Capitol, getting brutalized by police? No, we want to be able to create, to write. I love storytelling. I love doing poetry, spoken word, things like that. Just to be able to flourish, to be able to just spend time with my horse and not have to like be with these white supremacists. That's the world we're fighting for, and that we want our children to inherit. And so that's it. Bahala na.
Amen. Well, we appreciate you. Thank you for being on, and best of luck with everything coming up.
Appreciate you. Thank y'all so much. Yeah, this was amazing.
And 5, 6, 7, 8.